going to throw buzzwords around all the way. I'm going to speak English, so I hope that's okay. Hey everybody, I sat over there about 5 minutes ago, and now I'm here. I'm talking about stuff. My name is Dominik. You can see I'm a web dev. I'm currently working at Storyblok. Actually, it's my company, and I actually work on the headless CMS. We're using Vue.js, we're using Ruby on Rails, and we're using Auth0. And some of you maybe noticed the error on the whole website, or on this slide. I'm gonna fix it right now. So I hope you saw it. I switched the GitHub logo with the Microsoft logo. So I'm going to speak today about Auth0 and Vue.js, and the reason for that is quite simple. It all started with one thing. We have a website. On this website, we have a chat bubble. And on this chat bubble, you can write with us. There is a question, how can we help you? We're here for you. And some people actually took that really serious. And they were like, how to do website? Where is headless CMS? So how to do website is okay. And login with Vue. So I was like, okay, you can use Auth0 because we use it in Storyblok. And they were really like, do you have a tutorial? And I looked for a tutorial on Vue.js and Auth0, and all I found was the quick start of Auth0. And it wasn't really Vue.js, it was more like JavaScript, and you have some functions that you can call in Vue.js. So I was like, okay, well, let's do something with Vue.js and Auth0. And now I'm here, talking about Vue.js and Auth0. Yeah, you got it. Vue.js, what is Vue.js? Vue.js is a progressive JavaScript framework that you can use to replace your jQuery. It's lightweighter than Angular, so check it out. It's way easier. You can actually read the docs and you're ready to go. And the setup should be 2 lines of actually command line code. It's like install the CLI and great application. And I want to really mention Vuefixes.org. It's a group of women that doing workshops about Vue.js at your conference, if you want it. Bami? Mm-hmm. Okay. Next. Vuefixes, okay. So please check them out. It's really nice. And if you have any questions about the Vue community or Vue in general, we at Storyblok use it since version 0.11. This was like 3.5 years ago. And we managed to stay up to date till today. So we're at version 2.5.17, which is kind of nice. The second thing I want to talk about today is Auth0. Auth0 is, well, let me phrase it like this. Who of you ever built a login form? Who of you ever built a forgot password dialog? Who of you ever, that may be a little bit tricky, two-factor authentication. Okay, less. The whole idea is you don't have to build it anymore. There are services you can implement and use, like Auth0, especially Auth0, because you can use it for single sign-on, you can use it for two-factor authentication, you can use it for a simple login form, and you can use it for social login. You can actually use GitHub, or if you want to switch from GitHub, you can go with GitLab, of course. It's supported as well as many others as well. So I definitely check this out. And we have now 2 options. The goal for today is to build this. We want a website because the guy in the chat told us he wants to build a website, and he needs a login with Vue.js. So we're going to build a website with login and using Vue.js to do that. The 2 options are we're going to live code it or show you and walk you through the code. So what would be the better way for you guys? Live code it and die? Okay. Okay, live code? Live code, okay, okay, okay. Okay, and so since nobody noticed, I got an iPad here with the cheat sheet. So it's okay for me. So, I wrote them back. Actually, that's what our chat mainly looks like. You need a website and the login. And we were like, yeah, give us a second, be right back. Code in progress. So let's switch to the live code. I prepared a little thingy here. It's called Code Sandbox. If you don't know it, please check it out. Yeah, it's really awesome to do live coding, actually. I never used it till now, so all I'm saying now may be bullshit. We will see it in a few seconds. But actually, you can simply code React, Angular, Vue, and so on directly in your browser with a side-by-side view, so you can demonstrate it way better than switching through tabs. And if you have questions about that, maybe they have a live chat. Don't know. So what I got here is a demo Vue.js application that you normally get after running the CLI commands. You can actually have a look at the CLI commands directly in the tutorial. I got it right here, and you will see it later in the presentation again. Simply run npm install -g or yarn global add vue/cli and execute vue create my -project, and you're ready to go. Don't forget to select the router, because we're going to utilize the tools or the features of the router here. Right, so we got a basic Vue.js. Who of you ever used Vue.js? So, okay, enough, good. So what I'm going to do first is, I really don't like this hash in the URL here. Hope you can see it. Yeah, you can see it. Perfect. So I'm gonna start with adding the history mode. So to have this history mode running right in the sandbox, I need to once reload, because if I reload, it should begin in a few seconds. Let me have a look. So, okay, the reload didn't work, so let's switch to the new version, like mode history. You can see all I'm doing is writing code on the left side, and they will update it on the right side. And if I'm going to use it on the right side, I can actually use the application right away. They're doing the build job and all the things right in the background. You get the whole console log, you get problem analysis and tests as well. Not going to use that because I never had a look at it once, as I did the whole tutorial on this fallback here. So, first things first. Auth0 offers multiple ways to let you log in into their whole solution. We're going to use the one and only client application or single page application approach. That means we're logging in into a JavaScript application and storing the authentication token and the client ID, not the client secret, only the client ID in the JavaScript. Okay? So to do that, we will actually simply start with installing the Vue.js, the Auth0 dependency, which is kind of easy. You can simply install Auth0 -js. What I'm going to do here, if you never worked with Code Sandbox, it's like an npm install, and it's nothing more. The only difference is I don't have to do anything, so it's a little bit handier. And the next thing I'm going to do is I create an Auth0 file. To do that, all I have to do is to create an Auth0 file, of course. Would be strange if not. And other than the tutorial I will show you in a few seconds, we're going to really use Vue.js here. So we're going to simply write Vue and return out. So actually all we have to do is to actually, the call completion isn't that good yet, I guess. No, Vue. Vue. And we don't have to do that because we can actually want to do that. So what I'm going to do now is to write our own Vue.js plugin that utilizes a pattern you may like or maybe don't. We actually use the Vue prototype to and extend it with our own Vue component. The big approach, the big benefit here is that everywhere we are using Vue.js now, we have access to this .out. Okay, So every functionality I put into this Vue.js component, I have in the whole application. The big drawback on this functionality of Vue.js is somebody who never used Vue.js may assume that the out dollar or the $out functionality here is directly from Vue.js. So they may not know that this is a custom implementation and try to use it in the next project and figure out, oh, they need to add Auth0 again or this module. But we're going to use this because it's way more handy than to import it everywhere. And so we're going to do that. The next thing is we're going to import the Auth0. Yes, you may notice that I'm always writing single quotes on save, and if I have no errors, it will automatically switch to double quotes because that's how Code Sandbox does their stuff. So again, try it out. It's not that bad. And before I go into how to implement the whole thing, I'm going to start up Auth0. Why I'm doing this is because the tutorial they wrote is bad in some way, but they still have code I can use to initialize the whole Auth0.js application. You may notice that this is blurred out. This is blurred out because of this Chrome extension I used here, so you don't have to see some customers or email addresses because of the GDPR. So new application, StahlstadtJS. We choose a single page application and create. So what we have now, we have a new setup for a single page application in Auth0 with tons of tutorials you could actually use, like Angular 2, AngularJS 1, and Vue.js as well. So we're going to use Vue.js. And the whole tutorial in here introduces something like a service and constructor and stuff we normally don't use that much in Vue.js. Or I don't use it, and the guys that wrote me in the chat all the time didn't use it at all. So I was like, okay, good, you don't use that, so I won't use it either. So all I did now was to switch it out and use it in my Vue component. Let's do this real quick. You can see that I'm now going to use the Auth0 Node.js, not Node.js, the npm package they delivered. Initialized it with my credentials. The credentials will be automatically included in this tutorial, so I don't have to actually look up the client ID, the redirect URL and stuff like this. Okay, the redirect URL I have to change, but I don't have to look that up. And that's a great thing, because otherwise I would have to look through the settings and all the stuff, and we don't want that. So for the callback, we actually simply copy the URL right here and use the callback as it is. Like, why not? It's a callback, so let's call it callback. What we're do a little bit different than in the normal setup, we are going to actually use a different audience. There are different audiences in Auth0 you can utilize, and the audience is quite good described on the website. What basically means is you can load different data from different APIs. So, and I'm going to use the API for too. Some may don't like it. I like it. You can check it out. And what I'm also going to do is I'll add profile here. Scope means which data do you want from the user. In this case, I want a profile because I want the name and some other informations from them. So the next thing I'm going to do is to extract another part of their code. It's the login function right here. I'm simply going to take it and put it into a methods block of Vue.js, which is called login. I also switch to web out here, so I can actually use it. Next thing to do is, and that's kind of important, is to scroll a little bit farther into the tutorial and copy the handle authentication. I didn't write that myself, actually, obviously. I copied it. So it's not the live coding directly, but I had to understand the code that they wrote, so it's not that cheated at all. Maybe a little bit. A small bit. And I also don't like this stuff here. So all I do is like reject, and since I don't want to directly use it like this, I also return the promise here, because it's way more choicy than using it like they did. The main difference is we're using it directly from a Vue.js component right now, or we try to use it in a few seconds, other than they did, because they implemented a service that is not part of Vue in some way, and so you have always to inject it or use computer properties to properly use it in the end. And with this approach to create the Vue.js component that has some methods and properties, we can utilize way more functionality from Vue.js itself. And why not do that if you are in the Vue.js context? So we now have two functions. We have the login function that allows us to log in, and we have the handle authentication function that handles the authentication. We now need to say, yeah, there was a cringe in the audience, so it's pretty obvious what we're doing. We're doing an authentication. So the next thing we need to do is we need a callback somehow. The callback is actually nothing more than a simple view or another route we need. So you can think of it like Auth0, you're redirecting to Auth0 because you're using their hosted pages. The user will log in there, and the callback will be called on your application. So you need some point of entry point for Auth0. To do that, I'm going to copy it because it's not that complicated to write, but I'm still going to copy it because it's way faster. I added a template called callback. Callback has nothing to do with the code. It simply is there if you have some strange behavior or strange redirect. You at least have the callback that you know that you're on the right route. And we're going to use this.out. If I now press save, it won't work because of two reasons. First, I need to add the route to the router. So let's do that real quick. I need to import the new callback view. And if you think, no, it's working, not quite yet, because we of course also need to somehow use this code. And to use this code right here, all we have to do is to import the out we just created, the out component, and say view.use. And by doing so, yeah, let's have a look at this out here is undefined. Cancel out undefined prototype. Did I miswrite something? Could it be? Typo where? Oh, prototype. There we go. Thanks. Yeah. So live coding. Yay. Yeah. So what we now did is actually we wrote a Vue.js component that registered itself into the Vue context right here, as we tell Vue.js to do it, to call the install. And now we can use this Vue component to handle our authentication. So this.out.handle authentication.stand data, this.router. You see that this.adds router. They're using the same approach for the router and for the store as well. And there you can see the thing I told you about this pattern. It's good if you know that it's an external plugin you're using there, because you won't notice it. If it's well written, you won't notice it at all. So let's get going. We're copying now the URL because we need to configure some stuff in the application, because we need to somehow tell Auth0 to actually call back, because currently we don't have a callback at all. All we are telling Auth0 is to do something and nothing will happen. So we are going back to settings, scroll a bit down, and allow callback URLs. So our callback URL is quite simple. We're using the currently the code sandbox URL, which is some random key called sandbox.io, and press save. So guess what? You're done with Auth0. Yeah, that's it. And you already have a connection to a social login, which is by default Google. I didn't choose GitHub because of some reasons. I could choose Microsoft because of some reasons. But I went with Google because it's the default and I don't have to change anything right now. And if we are now going to save, nothing happens. So why did nothing happen? Because actually we never set any rules on which routes are allowed to be viewed and which are not allowed to be viewed. And we actually never use the data at all, and we are not even logged in at all. So what we're missing right now is, and that was the thing I really missed in the first version of the tutorial of them, was something like a navigation guard. Because the view router allows us to implement a navigation guard. So if you use or used a navigation guard or something like this before, okay, some of you, I'm going to implement a really basic one. And to show you how basic it is, I actually will copy the 5 lines with the 4 comments to speed up the whole process a little bit. What it does, it tells us the router to, before each route, do this or that. And in this case, if it's the route is callback, simply navigate it through because it's not logged in. It's going to be logged in the next route. And that also allows the about view to be viewed because about view can be viewed without any authentication. I suppose that's okay. And in the router, we have access to the application context by using router.app.out. Because this is the Vue.js application in the background. And you can see that we're, again, using the Auth0 or implementation in the background and the Vue.js component we created for Auth0 that allows us to call is authenticated, because if the user is authenticated, we simply went him through and tell him, yeah, do the next stuff, use the home URL or something else. And if not, we are going to trigger the login. And that's something really cool, because if I press save now and open it in a new window, you noticed that nothing will happen. But that's the big thing, we should have an error. It's not a function. What? I missed. Oh, I didn't implement it. So, because I only implemented the handle authentication and login, but I never implemented the is authenticated. So let's do that. Sorry. The cheat sheets are great. Oh yeah, that's actually quite simple, and I totally forgot it. The one thing I missed was to copy this from the tutorial we saw back then. It's simply check if the expiring date is greater than the current time. So let's add this, and we all should see some magic. There we go. So if I press now on the home page, because the home isn't logged in, or is at least not in the mentioned in the navigation guard, it's one of the routes that is protected. You can of course also use some kind of whitelist instead of a blacklist, or vice versa. And we're now going to log in with Google. You can see I wrote nothing of that code. All I had to do is to use the Auth0.js, Node.js, npm module, and you can see the 000 tenant. If you first create an account on Auth0, you have the choice of something like a username or a tenant ID. I was pretty early, so that's the 00. I didn't thought I ever would get the 000 tenant, but I got it. Yeah, it was kind of early. So you can simply press OK. As I mentioned, it was 3 years ago. And we are now logged in. Maybe. We are not logged in because what nobody noticed, or did somebody notice why we are not logged in?
You didn't say the errors yet?
Exactly. Not even the token, nor did I save any of the result. I simply told the promise to be resolved. And the reason for this is 2 things. You can either use the session storage or the local storage for this whole approach, because it's like and untrusted authentication in this part. There are multiple flows described on the Auth0 website, and what I'm going to use now is something I didn't see in the tutorial, and it's way much code to write, so I simply will copy it right now. But I will explain what it does. Vue.js allows us to define computer properties. And other than normal computer properties, Vue.js allows us to define getter and setter for those computer properties. And I found it really useful to utilize them to have some kind of sync with the local storage, because otherwise I have to somehow manage my whole state. I could have introduced Vuex, but it should be an example on how to get started with Vue.js and Auth0. So I went with a get, simply returns the local storage item with get item underscore the name of the attribute. And the setter for this computer property will set it in the local storage. Quite easy, I did this for all of them. The only thing I did for the expire at, and that's a thing I first really struggled, was I need, of course, to have a time span on when it's not going to be expired. So I added some time on this, and yeah. So that's basically the whole functionality. I simply set something into the local storage, so to save it, exactly. And what I'm still going to need to do is, I need to somehow set all that. To do that, I have the Auth0 result here, and I actually went way easier on that. I simply used the same name, except for the expires in or expires at, because I found expires at way more handy than expires in 2 hours. So that's the reason for the quick calculation up there in the commuter property. Access token. I really copied the one thing that isn't copy and pasted. Oh, damn it. Okay, I'm totally going to get this token. Okay. You need to understand that my keyboard is currently a little bit broken, so the left shift doesn't work at all, and I need to work with the right shift, and I never use the right shift. Yeah, that's exactly the reason. You can also see it on the, never mind. Yeah, and one thing to do, since you also want to allow your users to be logged out, we somehow need to let them log out. If you don't want, you can skip this part. Yeah, some of you logged, they saw the Google demo, hopefully. If you're not, there is a Google demo or some kind of demo on YouTube where there's to log out, and still was logged in, and tries to log out, and still was logged in. So have a look on YouTube, you will find it somewhere. If not, I don't have the link. It should be there somewhere. I looking for the cheat sheet. I'm not looking for a cheat sheet. I got it here. The logout function is as easy as you may already assumed. I will simply remove the items from the local storage and call web authorize, because the authorize will trigger Auth0 to do the redirect to the login form on the right side, and also checks if he is logged in, and because he isn't logged in at this moment because I removed all the local storage stuff. And that's the thing on the logout. So basically nothing special here. You can see I got redirected, I log in, I saw an error real quick appearing and disappearing because the navigation guard kicked in, and you can now see we are logged in. Yeah. It took, I don't have a look at the time, so I don't know. Okay, I'm
29 minutes.
29 minutes, okay. It was kind of on point, but it's completely useless because we didn't use the data and we didn't style it. So I'm gonna simply show you the final demo, how it could look like. Because the real cool thing about this Auth0 and the way to utilize Vue.js and this little piece of code here is that we're now able to utilize the whole user object, which is a payload of the Auth0 callback, in the whole application. And because we wrote some methods like handle authentication, is authenticated, logout and login, we can use those exact methods in, for example, one of those headers, or I can put it out here directly in the app. And that's really, really cool, because if you now have some time and integrated Bootstrap to have a Jumbotron like I did on the right side, you can, all you have to do is to access, for example, a user picture you can see this picture right here, is out.user, because user is in the payload, .picture. And you're able to access the user data they gave you the permissions to use. You saw the green checkbox I used and not the X on the left side. That was the consent the user gave me to comply with the, okay, you have to look that up. I'm not a lawyer, so maybe there needs to be something done. But I know that they are compliant somehow. And you're now able to have an area that is only available for authenticated users, because first you have the navigation guard that protects your routes, and you're also able to utilize the out.isAuthenticated. And only by using this one line of code, or actually this one, you're able to remove certain areas of your website or your application for not authenticated users. That's kind of nice to do. I'll wrap it up real quick. So let's wrap it up. I used that logo. Yeah, you said. Let's wrap it up. Vue.js. To get the whole demo and the whole applications, you can simply go on storyblog.com, how to Auth0 with Vue.js authentication. You can also see it on the first page on the tutorials. And there's, for those guys who never started Vue.js, which aren't that many, but maybe there are some, there's a tutorial link for the guys from, I don't know, Strasse, are you here? Strasse wrote, or a ghost wrote it, an article on our website about how to start with Vue.js. It's basically, it tells you to read the docs because the docs are amazing. Yeah. Auth0, there's of course a whole section on how to prepare the Auth0 space. I just did in a few seconds with the hashtag prepare-auth0. You will get the slides in a few seconds, so you have all the links. And why you should Auth0 is also there. There's a website for this. Why not? Why to use Auth0? It's basically save yourself like 90 times, not 90 days. You didn't see Storyblock, but you may noticed the blog entries there. I used my product. Sorry for the blog placement. To load them, headless CMS, do some stuff. Code Sandbox. With this link, whoever is fast enough can look it up right now. Too late. The whole thing is on GitHub. And same error again on GitHub. Yeah. If you have questions, ask me anything. Maybe now, maybe later. Maybe later. To close it up, I had to write him back. I had to. Otherwise, he would never know what happened.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, bye.